Hello and welcome to From Digital to D&D. In this series, some random guy on the internet tries to take a character from fiction and attempts to turn them into a useful stat block for you to use in your games of Dungeons & Dragons. For those of you unaware, each episode of this series will be broken down into the following sections. The character introduction, where I attempt to explain the background of the character. The feature breakdown, where I point out what aspect of the character I was attempting to convert. The stat block, where I show off the monster sheet and explain how it works and how to use it. And finally the plot hooks, where I explain possible uses for the character in your games of D&D. Naturally, any character that features in this series belongs to their respective owners. In this episode, we're setting a new bar of power that I doubt will be challenged for some time. Our first god enters the world of D&D to bring order to a universe of chaos, hailing from the multiverse of DC. Today, we're taking a look at the new god of apocalypse, the whole in everything, the one, the only, Darkseid.
I am entropy. I am death. I am Darkseid.
Darkseid is one of the most famous villains in the entire DC universe and stands as one of the most powerful beings in all of DC. But who is Darkseid? Darkseid is. In other words, Darkseid is the embodiment of evil and is one of the strongest new gods. New gods are special types of beings who are embodiments of ideas and concepts with incredible power and are far beyond a mortal comprehension. The new gods normally hail from two realms, New Genesis ruled by Highfather and Apocalypse ruled by Darkseid. Darkseid is evil incarnate. He rules Apocalypse with an iron fist and delights in the subjugation of others. Those who do not serve Darkseid willingly will be forced into submission, and those who resist will pray for death's sweet release by the time Darkseid is finished with them. Only the likes of Superman himself have a chance of standing against Darkseid, and always at a heavy cost. Darkseid has one true goal, and that is the total subjugation of all reality, so all serve his will. Those on Apocalypse serve Darkseid with a fanatical sense of loyalty built through fear, for none are spared his wrath should they earn it. Debuting in December 1970, Darkseid has demonstrated countless powers and abilities over the last 53 years that have established him as a true god to be revered. As a new god, Darkseid is infinitely smarter, faster, and stronger than the average person. Only beings of incredible strength can hurt Superman, and Darkseid can bring the Kryptonian to his knees with little issue. Not to mention, Darkseid could contend with pre-Crisis Superman, who could shatter universes with ease. Darkseid's strength is only matched by his endurance, which is best demonstrated by his power over the Omega effect. This source of power enhances Darkseid's already great power and allows him to use the Omega effect in various ways. Other beings who come into contact with the Omega effect are almost instantly destroyed, whereas Darkseid is its master. When hit with his own attacks, Darkseid barely flinches, whereas Superman is brought to his knees. Darkseid's signature ability is his Omega beams, which he can fire from his eyes. These beams are capable of great destruction, and Darkseid has complete control over them. Each beam can move independently and lock onto targets, which, when partnered with their incredible speed, make them virtually impossible to avoid. Normal people hit by the Omega beams are instantly disintegrated. But the scariest thing about the Omega effect as a whole is Darkseid's ability to use it in limitless ways. During Final Crisis, Batman was hit by a pair of Omega beams, but Darkseid did not intend to kill Batman with them. Instead, through the power of nobody staying dead in comics, through the power of the Omega effect, Batman was sent back in time to accumulate energy and become a living bomb. Darkseid can also instantly reconstruct anyone killed by the Omega effect with but a thought. Even death heals before the mighty Darkseid. There's also the Omega Sanction, where Darkseid traps an individual killed by the Omega effect in an endless succession of lives which get worse and worse each time the prisoner dies. He's not invincible and has been killed multiple times, but Darkseid is an entity beyond the mortal realm. Destroying Darkseid's body does not kill Darkseid, as the true Darkseid resides in a reality far beyond our own. The true Darkseid is impossibly large and incomprehensible that when he fell onto our reality, it nearly shattered. There is only one Darkseid, and all others are but avatars that share the might and will of the true Darkseid. Even as an avatar, Darkseid is immensely powerful, and he can alter his avatars at will. He can fly at high speeds, being able to keep up with the Flash at times. Darkseid has demonstrated telepathy and telekinesis. He can teleport, though not as far as using a boom tube. He's a genius, able to outsmart and outthink the likes of Brainiac and Batman. And with his immense army of parademons and followers, he almost never has to do his own dirty work. Despite being a tyrant, Darkseid holds a collection of close followers and even takes a certain degree of criticism from them, but only when given to him in a respectful manner. Darkseid is many things. A god is but one of them. Darkseid was an interesting character to try and give a stat sheet for. Normally, I would refrain and even suggest against letting players fight gods, but since Darkseid is almost always working through avatars, I think we can make an exception here. Luckily, we have a stat sheet for the Archdukes of the Nine Hells, Demon Lords of the Abyss, and Tiamat to show us how godlike beings work in 5th edition. And with that, here is the stat sheet for Darkseid. Funnily enough, Darkseid is one of the smallest sheets we've had so far, but I see that as a testament to his power. Darkseid does not need a myriad of abilities to be powerful. Darkseid is power. Naturally, you're free to look through the sheet at your own pace. But if you want to know the intricacies of the sheet and how each ability works, I'll run through it now. Darkseid is a new god, and despite his vile nature, he is a celestial being. Size is relative to beings like Darkseid, but in most depictions, he's very big, so I put him as large so he can loom over most players. As a tyrant, Darkseid is lawful evil. I'd actually argue Darkseid is a perfect example of lawful evil in non-D&D fictions. Darkseid seeks control above all, for all matter to bend to his will. He takes delight in the suffering of his enemies and has no issue taking any action to achieve his vision. Darkseid has an armor class of 20, which for a being like Darkseid might seem low, but allow me to explain. When attacked, Darkseid almost never dodges, as almost nothing can even phase him. I see Darkseid the same way I see Godzilla in the previous video. Darkseid isn't hard to hit, he's hard to hurt, which is shown by the average of 672 hit points he has. That's only 4 hit points lower than the Tarask's average. With a whopping 50 d10 hit dice with a constitution bonus of 397, Darkseid could have a maximum of 897 hit points, making him one of the most durable monsters in D&D. Darkseid has not shown himself to run fast, but that could be because such action is beneath him. So I gave him a walking speed of 40 feet and a flying speed of 150 feet, which he can hover with. Darkseid has flown at speeds beyond the speed of light, but for balance's sake I limited it to 150 feet, which is still really high. Moving on to base stats, Darkseid has the following ability scores: 13 Strength, 14 in Dexterity, 13 Constitution, 25 in Intelligence, 26 in Wisdom, and 28 in Charisma. He has a plus 11 to Dexterity saving throws, plus 16 to Intelligence saving throws, and plus 17 to Wisdom saving throws. Darkseid has a plus 19 to his Athletics, plus 17 to his Insight, plus 18 to his Intimidation, and a plus 17 to his Perception. Moving on to damage resistances, Darkseid is resistant to Acid, Lightning, Necrotic, Radiant, and Thunder damage. He's also immune to cold, fire, and poison, as well as any bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. Darkseid is also immune to being poisoned. You might expect him to be immune to being charmed and frightened, but Darkseid has actually been mind controlled before. albeit once, and he almost never shows fear. Given he has a plus 17 to his wisdom saving throws, an advantage from a trait we'll discuss later on, most people can't charm or frighten Darkseid anyway. As for senses, Darkseid has true sight out to 120 feet with a passive perception of 27. Not even Batman bothers trying to sneak up on Darkseid. As a new god, Darkseid speaks all languages and has telepathy out to 120 feet. Naturally, as an avatar of a god, Darkseid comes with a challenge rating of 30. But with the base stats done, we can move on to his traits. Darkseid's first trait is Aura of Fear, which forces any creature hostile to Darkseid that starts its turn within 60 feet of him to make a DC 26 Wisdom saving throw. If Darkseid is incapacitated, this trait doesn't function. If the creature fails, it is frightened of Darkseid until the start of its next turn, where it then has to make the saving throw again, assuming it's still in range. If the creature succeeds, it is immune to Darkseid's aura for 24 hours. The next trait is called Darkseid Is, named after Darkseid's common catchphrase. If Darkseid is reduced to 0 hit points or he dies, his body is destroyed and his essence travels back to the true Darkseid outside of reality. Darkseid can't take physical form again for a time, but he will come back. Legendary Resistance is a classic trait which lets Darkseid succeed on a saving throw he fails, which he can use 5 times a day. Limited Magic Immunity is a powerful trait that makes Darkseid immune to any spell of 4th level or lower unless he chooses to be affected. He also has advantage against all other spells of magical effects, as well as anything that tries to put him to sleep. This is meant to reflect how weaker beings cannot make Darkseid flinch and is sure to make your fireball happy wizard panic, ignoring the fact he's immune to fire damage anyway. Magical Weapons makes it so that Darkseid's weapon attacks are magical. New God is a trait that tells us Darkseid does not need to eat, drink, sleep, or breathe. After all, such things are below a being like Darkseid. Regeneration is another classic trait meant to reflect Darkseid's incredible durability. So long as Darkseid has at least 1 hit point, he regains 30 hit points at the start of his turn. Siege Monster lets Darkseid deal double damage to objects and structures. As a DC villain, smashing through buildings is a common trait. Darkseid's last trait is his spell casting, which lets him cast one of the following spells without needing material components. His spells uses Charisma as a spellcasting ability, which gives his spells a spell save DC of 26. Darkseid can cast Detect Thoughts, Dispel Magic, and Enlarge/Reduce at will. It should be noted, Darkseid can only cast Enlarge/Reduce on himself to reflect how his avatars can be different sizes. Darkseid also has the following spells which he can cast 3 times a day each. He can cast Catapult at 9th level, Dominate Monster, and Telekinesis. For those wondering, a 9th level catapult can use any object weighing up to 45 pounds and deals 11d8 bludgeoning damage. But now we move on to actions, and Darkseid's first action is multi-attack. With this action, Darkseid can make 2 slam attacks. When engaging in melee, Darkseid tends to throw few punches, and that's down to how much his punches hurt. Speaking of which, Slam is a melee weapon attack that has a plus 19 to hit with a reach of 5 feet against one target. On a hit, the target takes 4d12 plus 10 bludgeoning damage. That's a minimum of 14, average of 36, and a maximum of 58 bludgeoning damage from one strike. If he scores a critical hit, that's a maximum of 106 bludgeoning damage from one attack. I hope you can see why his multi-attack only lets him make 2 of these, given they're almost certainly going to hit. Boom Tube is a special action where Darkseid uses his mother box to open a boom tube, which I equate to the Gate spell. For those unaware, Gate is a 9th level spell which lets you create a magical gateway between 2 points which can be used anywhere in the multiverse. A boom tube is more or less identical. Darkseid's next action is his special action, Omega Effect, which has a recharge roll of 4 to 6. With this action, Darkseid can use one of his 3 Omega weapons. His first Omega weapon is Focused Omega Beams, which sees Darkseid fire 2 Omega Beams at one creature he can see or is aware of within 120 feet. The creature has to make a DC 26 Constitution saving throw, taking 16d12 radiant damage on a failure or half as much damage on a success. If the creature is reduced to 0 hit points by this, it's disintegrated, only leaving behind any magical equipment it was carrying. The next Omega weapon is Split Omega Beams, which is similar to the previous one except Darkseid can target 2 creatures instead, dealing 8 d12 radiant damage instead of 16 d12. Darkseid has shown us that each beam can target a separate entity. Darkseid's final Omega action is Omega Blast, which has him fire his Omega Beams in a straight line that is 120 feet long and 10 feet wide. Each creature in the area has to make a DC 26 Dexterity saving throw or take 16 d12 radiant damage on a failure or half as much damage on a success. Just like the other 2 Omega weapons, a creature reduced to 0 hit points is disintegrated along with any non-magical equipment it had. With actions done, we move on to legendary actions, which Darkseid can take 5 of at the end of another creature's turn, regaining any expended ones at the start of his own turn. Strike lets Darkseid make 1 slam attack. Heavy Strike costs 2 legendary actions to use and has Darkseid make 1 slam attack but with a little extra. On a successful hit, the creature has to make a DC 27 strength saving throw or be pushed 100 feet away from Darkseid. Once the creature comes to a stop, it takes 10d6 bludgeoning damage even if it didn't move the full 100 feet. If the creature travels more than 100 feet, it takes an additional 1d6 damage for every 10 feet it falls, up to a maximum of 10d6 extra bludgeoning damage. Once it stops falling, the creature is not prone unless it has a way to negate the fall. If the creature is knocked into another creature, the other creature has to make a DC 27 Dexterity saving throw or take 5d6 bludgeoning damage and also be knocked prone. As I said, smashing through buildings is a common trait. Teleport is the next legendary action and costs 2 legendary actions to use. As the name suggests, it lets Darkseid teleport to an unoccupied space he can see within 120 feet. Erosion Blast costs 3 legendary actions to use and lets Darkseid unleash a blast in a 60-foot sphere radius centered on himself. Each creature in the area has to make a DC 26 Constitution saving throw or take 6d12 radiant damage on a failure or half as much damage on a success. If a creature fails the saving throw by 5 or more, meaning if they roll 21 or lower, they are pushed 30 feet away from Darkseid and knocked prone. Darkseid's final legendary action is Master of the Omega Effect, which costs 5 legendary actions to use. Taking this legendary action allows Darkseid to recharge and use his Omega Effect action. But with that, we come to the end of the sheet. Those of you who have seen my previous videos might be surprised to see no mythic traits or mythic actions, but honestly, Darkseid doesn't need them. He's an absolute beast of a stat sheet and shows how you don't need a giant sheet to be strong. To toot my own horn a little bit, I'm happy with how this came out and think it will work perfectly for an epic level fight. I'd also be lying if I said I wasn't trying to shorten the sheets a little bit, as giant sheets can be overwhelming at times. But now that we can see how Darkseid functions on a stat sheet, how would he work in a D&D campaign? Darkseid actually works really well as an antagonist for a D&D campaign. He's just like villains like the Dead 3, Vecna, Tiamat, Demogorgon and other iconic big bads in that he doesn't actually need to be there to be a threat. Darkseid rules Apocalypse, which contains a grand army of followers, and just one of them could be an actual antagonist for your D&D game, whilst the shadow of Darkseid looms over it all. Perhaps a minion like Steppenwolf or Granny Goodness has been sent to prepare the world for Darkseid's invasion. Maybe someone from your D&D world wants to join Darkseid and is performing their actions to gain his favour. Darkseid needn't ever appear. Let the actions of his followers speak for him. Many follow Darkseid through choice or otherwise, and all of them fear him. Perhaps an ambitious wizard or noble seeks Darkseid's favour, willing to collect an object of interest or destroy a potential threat in his name. The story can revolve around the wizard or noble, and yet all of the events transpire because of Darkseid. They don't have to be humanoid either. Maybe a demon seeks to become a demon lord and has struck a deal with Darkseid. A powerful dragon might aid Darkseid, and once they achieve their goal, they will be given a kingdom to rule in his stead. But what about Darkseid himself? Unless it's for an invasion, Darkseid very rarely leaves Apokolips unless it's for something he deems worth his time. Such things might include information about the anti-life equation, a powerful artifact he could use in his conquest, a powerful being he seeks to dominate, or to settle a score. Above all else, Darkseid desires control, and what he cannot control, he destroys. If the Lord of Apokolips is seeing to something personally, it must be important. So, what can we do with these angles? Let's go with the invasion angle first. An entire campaign could build up to, or be about, Darkseid's invasion. Whilst he will not often lead from the front, Darkseid does have a habit of partaking in the destruction. Maybe the campaign begins with a scouting regiment of parademons, and about halfway through, Darkseid himself invades. The second half of the campaign can be about acquiring enough allies and power to try and send him back. Killing Darkseid should be a near impossible task, and the goal should be to send him back to Apokolips. Maybe he and his troops are allowed entry to the world by the use of a special artifact, as the gods of the setting stop Darkseid from entering freely. Only by destroying this artifact could Darkseid be banished back to Apokolips. Let's say he's seeking something related to the anti-life equation. The campaign can then be about getting to the information first and keeping it out of Darkseid's hands. Maybe the whole campaign takes place within the Omega Sanction, the players having already been killed by Darkseid and now have to escape the endless looping torment. A direct confrontation with Darkseid will almost certainly end poorly for the players without taking proper time and care. Of course, you don't have to use Darkseid as is. There's nothing stopping you from making the totally original Dark God Shadow Edge who happens to shoot beta lasers from his eyes. Darkseid fits a lot of classic villain tropes, but I feel he's one of the few who pulls them off. When dealing with a god, anything can happen. But with that, we've reached the end of today's video. Before you head off, I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope you managed to get something out of this. The Darkseid stat block is available on D&D Beyond for free, and the link to it is in the description. I hope you all have a great day, and may your dice roll favourably. Goodbye for now.